Hi, everybody. Welcome to the fifth edition of the All About Music digital sessions. Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful, wonderful audience, tuning in diligently, asking a lot of questions. That's really what we love. What we're trying to do with the All About Music digital sessions is educate people, educate artists especially, educate people in the business about various aspects of the business. Which are relevant today. We've had discussions on copyright. We've had discussions on where this is going to go after the pandemic. So we're picking up topics that we think will be of relevance to all sections of the music business, so to speak. In our attempt today, we have what's that? One second, guys. 1 second. Yo, this is Atul the Cool, and I have a question for All About Music digital sessions. I'm the dapper rapper. I'm the bad ustad. I'm a brand in myself. Should I release my music myself, or should I release music on a music label? If it's a music label, does it need to be my music label, or does it need to be another music label? And if I start a music label, what the hell do I need to do? Where do I get the money? How do I make money? How much does it cost to start a music label? Right? Enough of this tomfoolery. Just a bit of fun, guys. Okay, so I think the question is, does the cool Atul start his own music label? And what we'd really like to see is all of you who are watching now, what do you feel? Should an artist start his own music label? In the past, we've had people like Madonna start a music label called Maverick Records, which was a joint venture with Warner Music, which he was signed to earlier. We've seen other independent artists also sign with smaller independents and with large labels. So the question is, what do you guys feel? Because that's what our session about today is. We want to discuss how an artist should self-release music. Should he be looking at setting up his own label? Does he need to set up a label? What is that whole copyright business about? Does it need an entity, or can an individual own the recording rights? What about the underlying works? Who owns those? If he forms a label, how does he do it? How does he run it? What are the skill sets required? Whom does he hire to run the label? How does he make music to run the label? And most importantly, what are the challenges that these labels face, which can be overcome, as they have been in the West, by a very, very successful company? So do we have any answers yet? Does anyone have any opinion about whether I should start my own label as the cool dude, or whether I should just go out there and do my own thing? So I'm really not the best person to tell you all this. We've put together a panel of people who've done things and who've done things very successfully, stuff that you can learn from. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to one of the hottest young labels today. It's a hip-hop label. It's been set up by one of the hottest young rappers in the country today, Divine. The label is called Gully Gang. And we have today the co-founder of Gully Gang, Chaitanya Kataria, who's been Divine's manager, and now runs Gully Gang as the business head. So please welcome Chaitanya Kataria to the panel.
Hi, Atul.
Hi, Chaitanya. Great to see you.
Pleasure.
Busy. You released a single. I still call it a release. You guys call it a drop. So one came out yesterday.
All the same. Yes, we had two tracks which released in the past week, and there's a lot more coming. So trying to keep the train of music chugging.
Fantastic, and looking forward to talking to you about all this and the experience that it's been with Gully Gang and the setup of Gully Gang. Our second speaker is a gentleman who was the CEO of an organization called the Merlin Network, which was set up to help labels like Chaitanya's, bringing together independent artists to get better deals, basically. Again, let me not say too much because I always get things wrong. So please welcome Mr. Charles Caldas from London. Charles.
Afternoon, Atul. Hello, Chaitanya.
Wonderful to see you. Wonderful to see you. Nice and early in London. Not too early, is it?
It's lunchtime, so we're feeling good.
Oh, it's about lunchtime. That's fine. Great. And last but not least, on the panel today, we have an artist who's a brand in himself, perhaps bigger than most music labels. One half of the very successful brother duo of Salim and Suleiman Merchant. Please welcome Salim Merchant.
Hey, Atul. Hi, Charles. Hi, Chaitanya.
Hi, Salim.
I just had my... How are you guys doing?
Very well.
Well, that's what happens. In an organization, you get lunch at a decent time. When you're your own brand, you eat lunch whenever you can. Right, Salim?
Of course, yeah. Well, first of all, I'm really happy to be here. And this is, Atul, there was a really very kind introduction. Thank you very much for that. And this is going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to it.
We're looking forward to learning a lot because, as I was saying earlier, I get a lot of questions asked by young artists. So they're self-releasing music, many for the first time, saying, do we need to do a label? Do we need to set up a private limited company? Does it need to, be an entity? What do we do? So, Chaitanya, let's kick it off by talking about how you went about it with Divine. So what made you think of starting a music label? Why did you start a music label?
Why the primary motivation for us to start the label was we saw about a year and a half back this movement that was, coming in across the country with a lot of young artists entering the hip hop realm, trying to do things on their own. One sort of big gap that we saw was that if this is to move forward, there needs to be organized structures, organized companies which provide the infrastructure, the creative and the knowledge infrastructure for artists like this to develop. While there were artists like Divine, Nazy, Raftar, who had already been doing their things and very successfully across the underground and the more sort of mainstream realm. This new generation of artists, they weren't necessarily equipped in terms of the knowledge or didn't have access to other creators, other people, which would enable them to keep putting out their music regularly. So we thought, why not use the limited experience that we have in having sort of dealt in this realm and put together an entity which enables these artists that we sort of bet on, we think that they can do well in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and allow them to express themselves. So we set up the company, of which the music label is one part. Of course, there's other aspects like we manage these artists as well. We have a very strong creative and content team. And there's other aspects like merchandising, which we are exploring as well. However, the music forms our foundation, our bread and butter. If that doesn't work, then everything else,
Sure.
is secondary.
So all these other verticals that you have within the organization are also under the Gully Gang brand. Is it all Gully Gang Records, or does it go by another?
No, it's so Gully Gang Entertainment is the sort of parent company, if you will, and then Gully Gang Records is under it, and then there's production, merchandising, and these other aspects.
Right.
What we were very intent on from the beginning was to ensure that we have, if I break it down, to create one track, especially for a hip hop artist, and most of these guys write their own music. So they tend to, be the lyricist and the performer, the vocalist for their music. You need to work with composers, music producers. You need to work with a recording engineer, a mixing engineer, sometimes a mixing and mastering engineer. You need, because it's a very visual medium, you need a good videographer, a music video director, and of course the teams that are associated with it. Further to which you have to put out your music. How do you navigate in that sense?
We'll get into the details and the God lies in there. So I think we'll have a little more meaty chat about that. So I get it. Gully Gang Records is not about Divine. It's not a one-horse town. You're looking at other artists in the same genre, keeping the sentiment of the brand, what it stands for, very alive. You're going out and encouraging and signing other artists in the same genre of music. And
currently it's hip hop. Currently it's hip hop, but we sort of foresee it developing into other facets of urban music, such as R&B over time, or even other genres which might come up. You don't know. So that's something that we're trying to actively encourage.
Fair enough. So as you go along, you'll decide. Great. Sounds very good. So Salim, these guys have set up Gully Gang Records now when Divine's popularity literally is at its peak, or at the moment is at its peak. I mean, he's going to get much bigger, of course. But they've just stepped out at the right time, set up Gully Gang Records. I remember some time back, Suleiman and you had set up something called Blue Productions.
Yeah, it's still on.
It's still on. Okay. Yeah. So is that the label under which you're releasing your music?
Yes, it's called Blue Publishing.
Blue Publishing. Right.
Yeah, so we've been quietly releasing stuff since the past 8 years now.
Yeah, but the problem with you guys, which is a great problem to have, is that your brand is bigger than any label. Salim Sulaiman today are much larger than any label, at least any independent label, right? So you haven't, like Tanya is hoping to do, sign a roster of artists. Blue Publishing has not signed a roster of artists. This is all about Salim Sulaiman and their music.
Yes, that's right. But in the last 6 months, there's the inception of Merchant Records, which we are launching any minute. It was supposed to launch before the lockdown, actually, with Bhumi 2020, our new record. But obviously, things have delayed now because of what's going on.
Right. So Bhumi 2020 is something that we're definitely going to talk about, Salim, because, as I was talking to you earlier, that's something we'd definitely like to showcase in a very big way. And I think, that's going to be a landmark project for Salim Sulaiman, Blue Publishing, wherever you choose to park it. But with both you gentlemen, so you've been working with labels that are not major labels. They are labels that you have set up, and you've gone out and done your things. And Chaitanya was just starting to talk about the different facets of the business that you need to attend to in the business. So now I'm going to come back to Chaitanya. I'm sorry, Charles, we're just going to lay the ground for you to walk in. So Chaitanya, now go ahead and talk about what you were saying. What are the different aspects of the business that Gully Gang actually does? What do they cater to?
As I said, the foundation remains the music, which is the label side of things. With this sets us up to enable us to do other things which permeate into regular culture. Why there's a reason why hip hop right now globally and in India, why it's really breaking out, is what I feel is because it permeates into culture. It permeates into fashion. It permeates into how people speak, and those are second order, third order effects which we don't realize until very later. So it's more of a cultural movement than just a genre. So our idea was, how can we facilitate this movement amongst a set of artists that we like? We focus on lyrical hip hop, which is focused on lyrics and sort of real facets of experiences which these guys talk about. How can we facilitate creation and enable them to keep making this and keep putting this out? So the idea was, let's sort of put together an ecosystem which would enable them to write, which enable them to produce music along with other composers, to get the best quality product, or rather, I hate to call it a product, but to get the best quality music released that is possible from their end, and then figure out the way to put it out in the best possible fashion for that particular release.
So that's the creative part.
The creative part, yeah.
After you finish the creative, then there's a whole new journey that you have to undertake.
Yeah.
So there's distribution, marketing, and publishing, to put it in a nutshell, and then there's the live. So do you have separate departments to do that? You have employees who handle those different pieces of the business?
They do. There is a lot of course, with all small companies, there is a lot of overlap in these things in terms of skill sets and in terms of people sort of taking up
I
those
should know.
roles.
I'm MD and peon of Turnkey, so not to worry.
But yes, distribution is the next sort of step in terms of how the music should be put out, what platforms you want to focus on. In India, we have a very unique position where we have around 8 and I think 9 now audio platforms. Plus, of course, there's video platforms like YouTube. How to put the music out, the strategy, what it should be. I think there is no one right way to put things out. You want your music to be available to as many people as possible. Because the trends that we are seeing is that certain platforms are stronger in certain regions in India. Like India is not. It's a mixture of many different cultures and languages. So that's the approach. We're finding out new things as we go. And I think, as you alluded to in one of the earlier panels in this series, that the penetration in India is still at a single digit number of what it could be for music and entertainment. So there's a long way to go, and I think there's a lot more room for people to come in and other players to come in and try to experiment and see what they can do.
Right. So Salim, with the benefit of having known you for a few years now, I know that you don't give a rat's ass about anything but the music, right? So it's all about the music. You're thinking music, you're dreaming music, you're doing music, and I don't see an army of people working for Blue Publishing. You're obviously holding hands when it comes to other parts of the business. So how do you manage all this? Like Chaitanya was talking about, the distribution and stuff. How do you go about it?
Okay, first of all, I'm seeing the live comments as well while Chaitanya was talking. So I want to just say thank you, Narendra. My old friend Narendra Kusrur is there. There's a lot of amazing people. There's Umang Doshi, there's Ayushman Sinha, and all these familiar names and friends. Devi Prasad, thank you all for joining in. Ricky Cage is here. Atul, it's tough because first of all, I initially in the initial years in 2012, 2013, I didn't know, when we launch do you launch your own label? So we have a YouTube channel, of course. We still have one, and it's still called Salim Sulaiman, the YouTube channel. And most of the time we would just put out our music there, and then slowly we were seeing that there's Apple Music, there's Ghana, there's all these kind of streaming platforms which are happening. And so we would, then we met someone from Orchard, and then we said, okay, we should, Orchard aggregators who have presence in India. So we had a login. I mean, we still have a login. So we log in before we release our music, we sort of we upload the artwork and the music.
So you're doing that yourself, Salim? Sorry, I'm going to keep interrupting. You're doing it yourself.
Yes, we're doing it ourselves. We don't have we have a 5 people army that works like 20 people.
Okay. So
it's me, Sulaiman, that's 2. There's Raj, there's Aftab, who's our engineer, who you know very well, and there's Nirav. And now we have a...
So go ahead. So you get your distribution through the Orchard. And what about your YouTube channel? Who manages that?
It's sitting on QKey's MCN at the moment. Yeah.
So you've joined hands with the distributor there. You've joined hands with an MCN here. What other part of the business do you need to attend to?
So, but Atul, the problem is that it's not very easy. Each time you bring out any music, you obviously kind of need to push all the streaming platforms to show you some presence, and that's a standard thing for everyone. So a little nudge, a little, kind of a little push, a little email, a little message here and there that, we're releasing our music. You got to make a call to Clint from Orchard and say like, buddy, please make the calls and make sure the music is felt everywhere. But we are very fortunate that Atul, the social media is a big, strong player in this game. When you release your music, you have like 3 days to go, 2 days to go, all that kind of stuff. And that also we make ourselves mostly. All these flyers and posters, and there are a lot of apps that we use. So it's pretty much doing everything yourself. I do things on the way from while landing on the plane. I'm making all these things on my apps on my phone. while coming from a city, from a concert and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm working non-stop. I barely sleep.
So we'll
Um,
we'll come back to that, because I know what you've just done. And thank you for that bit about the streaming business, because now I can bring Charles into the conversation. Charles, I'm sorry, we woke you up at breakfast time and now we're talking to you at lunchtime. But Salim was talking about something, and I saw you roll your eyes a bit and say, "Oh God, I've heard that for the, I don't know, gazillionth time." So first of all, let's talk about Merlin, because I think there are still a number of people in the audience who are not aware of what the Merlin network is. So if you could please quickly explain what the Merlin network is.
So just quickly, the Merlin network is a global body, rights body, licensing body, that represents independent labels of all shapes and sizes and independent distributors to help them do the best business they possibly can in a way that competes with any major label in terms of the value of the deals and the benefits you get from those deals.
So hang on. So again, questions. It doesn't take a genius to ask questions, so that's why I'm going to ask a lot of them. So are you telling me that there is a difference in the rates that are offered to major labels, let's say independent labels, and maybe independent artists when it comes to distributors?
Look, I think the market, and in partly because of the work that Merlin's done over the last 12 years, the market's much more balanced than it used to be. But one of the founding reasons, or the reasons for the foundation of Merlin, was that independent labels, and the reason I was smiling when I was listening to Chalim and Chaitanya is these stories that they're telling about their own businesses are universal stories. This is very similar conversations I've had, whether I'm in Germany or Brazil or Japan or New Zealand. The stories that lead to the kind of companies that these guys run are very universal. And what was happening, 12 years ago is taking these kind of companies and these people who had created their own businesses and were really seeking to control their own destiny, were facing this marketplace where it was difficult to get the kind of deals that the major labels were getting 12 years ago as an independent. There was just thousands and thousands of independents around the world. If you were Apple or Spotify or Microsoft or whoever it was at the time, you could do the 4 major labels that existed, global deals in 4 conversations. To get the rest of the market, to get all the independents, there was tens of thousands of conversations. So there was a real imbalance there. So Merlin, really, the principle was to say, the music that Salim and Chaitanya put out is not inherently worth less than music that's put out on a major label. Fans love it. People have the same experience listening to it. So for there to be a healthy rights ecosystem and value ecosystem, there needs to be an equitable way to distribute the benefits of these, of the money that comes out. And over the 12 years that I ran Merlin, and I stepped down at the end of the last year, the market evolved along with, again, a lot of the things these guys were talking about. We went from a physical market to a digital market. We went from having very little piracy to a lot of piracy. We went from having very local relationships to global relationships. And that need to control the message and to control the way that you put your music into the marketplace becomes more and more important in being consistent in how you tell your story. So Merlin really was there as a facilitator to make sure that these labels didn't have to worry about getting the right deal or getting the money in or getting the advances in or getting equity in Spotify or any of these things that Merlin did. They could focus on running the best business they possibly could, knowing that someone in the background was looking after their financial interests. And we think that really changed the landscape for independence globally. I mean, when I left, Merlin was representing companies from 62 different countries around the world, all with very similar stories to what we're hearing today.
That's fantastic. So the one thing is that people confuse Merlin with people like The Orchard and Believe.
Yeah.
So Merlin does not physically distribute product themselves or digitally distribute product themselves.
Correct. So Merlin really facilitates the market for people who are active in the marketplace. So there are the Orchard, and the Orchard's owned by Sony, so it couldn't be a part of Merlin because it's a major label. Believe was never a member of Merlin, but we have most of the rest of the distributors around the world were part of Merlin because they also wanted to be sure that they were offering their clients deals that were competitive with the major labels. Some of them became part of major labels like The Orchard, or Ingrooves has become part of Universal now, for example. So there's major labels are buying in these independent rights. But no, so Merlin was really there to be able to say to all of these labels, we don't want to get in the way between what you do, how you get your music to the marketplace, because you know that better than anyone. You know how to market your artists. What we're going to do is create the healthiest ecosystem possible. We're going to give you all of the opportunities that we believe the biggest record companies have, and we're going to educate you in how to use those to maximize the value of your business. And I think, again, if you look at the 12 years and the growth of Merlin and the growth of the revenues and the growth of the membership, I think that's become a very important resource for people who make that decision. Now, it's more complicated than that, as I think Salim and Chaitanya have just spoken about. If there's 5 of you trying to put out records, market, do your social media, make your video content, manage your YouTube channels, manage your artists, and do everything else, it's very difficult to sit and run a global business.
So yeah, Salim has been doing music and albums from the time when there was only physical product. And at the time, there was this whole challenge that non-film music used to face, because India has a peculiar problem when it's not so much about the major labels as it's about the majority music, which is film music. So whether it's regional language films or whether it's Bollywood in Hindi, it always dominates the media space. So, but Salim, given the brand that you are yourself, having successfully done albums, moved into Bollywood, having done Bollywood soundtracks, and then coming back to doing non-film music, do you ever face this problem of getting media attention, getting a media share, or does it work well for you because you are the brand that you are?
No, Atul, it's look, we don't even have, a long time ago, we didn't even have a music industry. We had a film industry. You know that very well. We started off as a music industry with Magna Sound and all that. There was a great, nice movement. But it was very minuscule, yeah. The classical world and, the non-film, the rock scene, and it was very small. We mainly had a film scene. But now we have for the last 5, 7, 8 years, it's been pretty amazing. The independent music scene has gone really incredible. I would say it's like 46-54, 46 being independent and 54 being film. So it's a great time right now, and it's only going to get better. In terms of media attention, yes, you can't really beat those the film, the film music mafia. Sorry, I call it mafia because
call it a juggernaut. It's not a mafia.
You know me.
It's the juggernaut.
I can't keep my mouth shut. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. There's a lot of muscle there because A, the subs on their channels, B, the film stars themselves, the television channels, all kinds of digital medium want to just run after stars, and but that's changing amazingly, which is I'm really happy with. Like, I've seen 20 years ago what the scene was. I enjoyed the glory of the film situation where I was doing soundtracks, and all our music was doing really, really well. And then we decided to kind of step back and decide to do some independent music, which is now getting really amazing. Like, people are really kind of opening out, and it doesn't matter. Today, music is heard on as part of playlists. It really doesn't matter whether it's part of a soundtrack, film soundtrack, or no. If the song is good, if the music has some, some heart and some soul and some really strong something to say, then it's heard and it has its audience. And of course, if you're a live artist, it's really amazing because then you can really popularize your song.
Right, and I think Chaitanya, that's what. So full credit to you guys. What Salim is talking about the last 5 or 8 years, having seen this explosion of independent music, it is really because of guys like you, who've actually pushed that envelope. So just to kind of pick up between what Charles was saying and what Salim was saying, there is still this dominance that Bollywood music has in the media. So, do you see some value in trying to piece, and a body together that will be a collective of independence? So, in the physical days in England, for example, they had AIM, which was the Association of Independent Music. Uh, Merlin was an association of independent content owners and digital distributors. And you were telling me some time ago that there is opportunity to work together with other people, and you have no fears about that. So, what do you think a collective in our situation would do? Because given that people like the Orchard and Believe today actually are coming forward and offering extremely good deals, so I'm just clarifying that I have no problem with them because the earlier statement might have felt Clint won't talk to me again. But so because I think on the distribution side, it's fine. But there are other challenges when it comes to the media, when it comes to digital marketing, radio, as Salim was mentioning, about even subs sitting on YouTube, etc. What are your thoughts about putting a collective together and roping more people in? Because anyway, you're doing it for the label.
I agree with what Salim said, that if the music is good, if it evokes some sort of emotion, if it says something that relates to someone, if it has a market of one, if it connects with a group of people, it will find its way to you. It will do well. It may take some time. It may take a week. It may take take 6 months. We've seen tracks which have been around for 2 years breaking out and entering charts 2 years later. So that's the primary focus has to be on the music. Having said that, I do think that amongst especially a lot of starter labels and starter companies amongst us, and young independent artists and artists who are not necessarily in the Bollywood framework of things, there is space, scope for a collective to come in play in terms of how to approach, say, deals with larger companies than yours, how to approach certain types of deals, how to sort of come together and share your collective knowledge infrastructure in terms of improving the things that you're already doing, sort of taking out the inefficiencies that are in the business side of things right now, in terms of how to market things, how to approach legalities. I definitely think there is scope for sort of an agency, if you will, or a collective to come and advise each other there.
So, it's interesting because a few years ago, I don't know if they're watching, but KJ Singh, Aishwarya Natarajan, Emma, Divya Bhatia, myself, Amit Datta, we were all talking about creating that collective called, I think we were wanting to call it the Indian Association for Independent Music. But the problem really, Chaitanya, is money. So, there is cost that is involved when you're running an organization like this. Even if you put together a collective, and I'm sure Charles saw it, Merlin had to retain a certain percentage of revenue, or someone had to put the money in, and that becomes the challenge. So for all of you, where does the money come from? So it's very easy to say, yes, we should start a label, yes, we should do that, yes, we should do this. Where's the money coming from? Charles, you want to take that first?
Yeah, look, I think, the thing that would strike me just before I get to the money is this is an incredibly exciting time in the Indian industry. And I think you have a lot of people trying to do similar things. I mean, Chaitanya, you said there's 5 or 6 hip hop labels now, all probably founded in the last 3 or 4 years. This is an incredibly dynamic time. And I think the thing that's been proved time and time again with these other kinds of associations around the world is that much as everyone's competing with each other, you're actually redefining the business. You're creating a new style of entity, a new kind of company. Even using the word label is not necessarily 100% accurate in describing these companies. And we're seeing equivalents around the world. Steve Aoki, the DJ, very famous DJ, created this Dim Mak company to control his rights. Diplo has created Mad Decent. We're seeing artists start to think like this about managing their careers. To the collective side, funding is always an issue. For Merlin, it was quite simple because what we were able to say to people is, look, we're going to get you more money than you will get by doing this yourself. And we had to prove that because of the way we operated. Everybody could opt in or out of any deal that we did. But we took a very small percentage. Merlin took 1.25%, 1.5% of the revenues that came through that we processed to fund the organization to continue doing what we did, to take legal action against people who were stealing music, to do everything we did. And I think for all of the members, such a tiny percentage of their revenue became very good value because we might have taken 1.5%, but maybe we delivered 10%. So there was an 8.5% increase. So I think something Chaitanya said, though, is the key to this. It's about the efficiencies. And if you can identify what the inefficiencies are and where everybody is maybe losing opportunities or revenue or access because they are all trying to do the same thing at the same time and getting in each other's ways, and then finding how that can benefit your clients. So for Merlin, it was a very compelling story to go to Spotify before they launched and say, look, instead of doing 10,000 deals, we're going to deliver you the content that you would get under 10,000 deals in one deal and use one contract, one point of payment, one point of reporting. For a company like that to be given a solution that says, okay, I don't have to employ all these people to run 10,000 accounts, I have one account, is very, very appealing. And I think, the people who are at the front line of this new generation of the Indian music industry are going to be the ones that really understand the nuances, because I know it's a unique market. It's the dominance of film music doesn't really exist to the scale that it does in India or anywhere else. But you guys are at the front line of this. You know what your challenges are and you know what opportunities might be there. And then there's all these global entities that you can tap into as well. Like I said, I think we're one of the things that I really learned about the 12 years at Merlin is that we've moved from a very localized market that we were in the physical space to a truly global market. And the global market means that there's people in your situation in other markets around the world. The market, your music is moving around the world in new ways that might be similar to how music from other countries that maybe are not singing in English are moving, or cultures with big diasporas around the world. So there's these global networks becoming increasingly important. I think your Will Page session, a couple of weeks ago, really touched on this, is that, no label in the world should be thinking of themselves by their nationality anymore. You are a music creator or a music producer in a global marketplace. And Indians in particular, with the volume of NRIs around the world and students around the world and the impact that Indian culture has and the way that it echoes in the world market, creates all of this global opportunity for you. So incredibly
absolutely, because I think both the gentlemen sitting here are holding hands with artists from outside India. They're doing a lot of stuff. And so Chaitanya, I've always wanted to ask you this. So you have Gully Gang, Divine's label, Divine is signed to, and then there's this deal with Mass Appeal. So how does that work? So you do all the good songs in Gully Gang and give all the crap to Universal? Is that how it works?
No, not necessarily. At least I can't say that on record.
So what's the benefit of Mass Appeal?
See, that's something that developed very organically. There was a collaboration that happened with Nas, Divine, and Nazy last year for Gully Boy's end credits. The song called NYC Mumbai, and that was facilitated by the film and Jio Sawan, who had sort of taken up the mantle of putting that out. And through that, we connected to Mass Appeal, Nas's team. Mass Appeal, for those who are not aware, is Nas's hip hop label. They're very respected name in hip hop and urban music and culture in the United States, and they've been doing things for I think over 20 years now. So organically developed into conversation with them, wherein we were bringing about Divine's debut album, and they were like, okay, why not sort of come on to it? And for an artist like Divine, signing on his first debut album, even though he has a lot of music that has been out, to Nas, who's been an idol. You've grown up listening to this artist. He's one of the best artists ever in the genre that you're pursuing, and you get an opportunity to work with him, get a co-sign from him. So I think that was something that's very hard to say no to. And I think that's a decision we feel vindicated on, because the album is done very well. It's reached far wider than we thought initially, or we had planned initially. And yeah, there's a lot more to come. The flexibility of the relationship is that certain things which, if we think we can take to, say, for as an analogy, 0 to 50, getting the additional support from the network of a major which is sort of dealing with things which we may not have the time to deal with, or the infrastructure to deal with, that allows us to take from 50 to 100. So there is no one way to decide, okay, this is something that we put out ourselves, or this is something we put out in partnership with someone. If you look at specifically hip hop in the West, you see labels like Def Jam and even Republic Records coming together to put out a release. You see sometimes Shady Records and Aftermath coming together to put out a release. So it's a model that's new to India, and we're trying to sort of do things that haven't been tested out before.
Okay. So Salim, I'm just staying with another conversation we had some time back. You all your independent music, you're very true to it, and you're so close to it. You make sure that the videos are spectacular. They're absolutely spectacular. You spare no expense, whether it's shooting in Russia or Poland or whatever you're doing, right? It's all fantastic. Now we have the new song called Malik Mere, shot in the lockdown. And let's do one thing. Let's first take a look at a little bit of the video. We're not going to play the whole video, and then let's talk about it. Guys, can we roll the video, please?
Oh, thank you.
सारी रात में करता रहा तेरी इबादतें, महफूज हूँ तेरी राह में, करना हिफाजतें। मैं मुरीद हूँ खादिम तेरा, मैंने की है खता तो होना खफा, वो दे शिफा। मालिक मेरे तेरे बंदे हैं हम, कर नजरे करम। मालिक मेरे तेरे बंदे हैं हम, कर नजरे करम। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला सिखा दे मुझे बंदगी का तरीका, दिखा दे मुझे काबा और मदीना। मैंने की है खता तू होना खफा, अब दे शिफा।
Okay, so that's obviously been done in the lockdown. What was your learning from this? What was the great learning from this?
The great learning was not spend so much money on videos, because it's really like you can to bring out your music, you can actually do a video which is affordable, and it doesn't really load your
Salim, talk a little more about this, because this is the one place where a lot of artists get stuck. They don't know what to do with videos. And it's something I've always felt, because we kind of introduced the whole music video business back in the 90s. Yeah. And the music video is a very powerful tool in making your music successful. because it showcases the song better and it showcases the artist. So that's why a lot of attention was paid. So
But,
Salim,
but Atul, I've proved. I mean, I completely agree with you, but I proved ourselves wrong here because I mean, this song. I never expected this song. First of all, to make this song and then to execute it and like shoot this home video kind of thing, like the Osmo doing the gimbal shooting and all that stuff. And I never realized that we can do all these things, and using some stock footage from here and there, and so it was pretty amazing. Like, I mean, it's done in no cost. The video is done in no cost, and the music is still out and it's trending on YouTube. Of course, it's Eid time, so it's a great time to put this out, and we had planned it like that. But before I even talk about this video, I want to just kind of reflect upon what Charles said and Chaitanya said and you said. And I want to say this because this is a big problem with all of us. We all started, I mean, it's a great time that everyone's starting individual labels and all artists start individual labels. One thing we are forgetting is the whole joy of music is when you collaborate. And when and of course, Chaitanya said that, Divine and Nazy want to collaborate with Nas. And it's great that, you decided to release it on one. But how do you decide if everybody's got their own label? How do you decide? And I have faced this, that now I want to work with the next artist. The artist will say, "Sir, I can't now. You'll have to ask so and so because now we have our own label. Yeah, we can't work with you." So I'm like, really? I mean, now it's come to that. Like, music has become all about everybody's become so individualistic, and every label is like, so this is going to be me. I can't do anything away from this. Now that's completely breaking the spirit of having independence in music and independent labels. We are beating the purpose if we are not following the simple joy of music being about people and about being collaborations. That's a big problem. Here, coming back to the video which we did here, we had none of that stuff. Every artist was someone who was easy, including Rahul Sharma. He's like, I called him and he's like, yes, I want to do it. And I mean, classical artists do have sometimes some kind, I don't want to like be part of any pop thing, I don't want to be part of any film thing, but there was nothing like that. I just called him, he said, I'll be on. I'll be going to record this Santoor from my iPhone. Is that okay? I said, yes, it's okay. I called Aftab. Aftab said there's an app called Dolby Atmos on the iPhone. Let's record through that. So we recorded the Santoor from an iPhone. There was no microphone, there was no nothing. And so it was difficult, but like at least the intent was incredible. Everyone was happy. There was no like, I'll ask my label, I'll ask my this. That's a big problem these days.
But this is fascinating, Sandeep. This is fascinating simply because every conversation, every session we've had all about music, digital sessions, everyone has stressed the same thing. And this has got highlighted, especially in this Corona lockdown, where everybody needs to hold hands, and that's causing a lot of great music to be created. And I must say again, I'll tell you, the kids on your song, I haven't seen a lot of them. I don't know who they are, but the singing is incredible. I was so blown away. I told you yesterday, this is just absolutely fantastic. So just some very very quick ones. Chaitanya, even Charles. You have seen into how independent labels are structured, and now with this 360-degree thing coming in, how is the breakup of revenue? So when you're earning monies, is it like 70% live, 10% from recordings, 5% from publishing? Just give us a general sense so that people who are wanting to self-release have some indication of what they need to be looking at and where they need to focus.
I'll go first with this one. Traditionally, over the past few years, live has of course been the dominant revenue source for most musicians and most artists across genres. In fact, whether you're releasing music or not, live has been the go-to, and that we're in a situation where right now that's been almost entirely eliminated for most of us. See, the idea for any artist, regardless of whether you sign to a label, you're independent or not, is to try and ensure that your breakup of revenue is hedged across multiple revenue sources. Your be it live, be it money from brands, be it money from content, creating music, creating work for hire, music for ads, and all sorts of things. Of course, the issue is that unless you get to a certain stage, where do the brand deals, where do the brand collaborations come in, and where do you get more work for hire music coming in? So you have to work your way towards building a bank of music which allows you to get there. Once you do get there, it's highly recommended, and considering the situation we're in, to try and diversify your keep it equal as far as possible. I know it's not possible mathematically always to do this, but if you strive towards it, I think you are saving yourself and hedging your risk.
So
And
quick question always
yeah.
is then, do you deploy more resources on the stream that gives you more money? So if live is giving you, pick a number, 70%, 80% of your revenue, are you going to have more people pushing that? Or are you going to say, let me reduce the dependence on live and let me put more resources on, the recording and the publishing part of it, for example, so that I can, make headway in those revenue streams?
I think it's not a zero-sum game. It's purely dependent on how much work you can put in and how much time you can allocate towards things. As an artist, if you want to tour more, tour more. If you want to spend more time towards creating music, do that. But the ideal situation is across, if you purely break it down over a period of a financial year, is to ensure that you are doing enough of these 4 or 5 different activities for yourself, so that if for whatever one reason one activity dries up, you have sort of revenue coming in from these
the
other,
which is
yeah,
what's
the
happened
other.
today. So Charles, just to talk about Merlin, and of course it did increase the digital revenue for artists especially, but did or does a collective like Merlin actually also go out and engage with brands? Because a lot of people are looking at brands as really the business today. So does something like that happen?
Not so much on a collective basis, because the branding activity tends to be very much driven by individual artists and individual brands and campaigns in particular markets. But I think, to go back to your question about the percentages and how how it breaks down, there's so many answers to that question. And the factor that depends that is how much the streaming services have penetrated in your market. So if you have an artist who's very successful in Norway or Sweden, where streaming is such a dominant revenue stream and so much of the population has subscriptions to streaming platforms, it's a very different answer to what you'll get to in India, which is just really starting that journey to maturity. So I think a lot of labels are taking Chaitanya's approach, which is what's right for my artist. Are they really driving their career through their live, or are we better getting them to amplify their voice through making really, really great recordings and taking a longer view of that? And so, I think there's as many answers to these questions as there are artists in the world, because each artist is, in some ways unique. But I also agree with what Salim says on the community side of this. This lockdown is really giving us all the opportunity to rethink our perceived wisdom about what it is that we do. And one of the great things I've had in my career in the independent sector is I've learned more and more that it's truly a community. This is not just 4 big multinational corporations battling for market share. This is a whole bunch of people who are creating and defining a scene or a style of music or a genre, or highlighting, a particular part of their culture and finding connections on that. So, and I think the hope, my hope is that this lockdown enforced sort of introspection that we're going through really brings to the forward this need to make these connections in new ways, and to think about where your audience is and how you get to them. It's
for sure. Okay, so you know what, we're going to run out of time, and I think Salim's got to go as well. So there are some questions that we'd like to take from the audience, because I've worked out them quite a lot, and I think Vinod Nair had one. Who wants to take that? I think Chaitanya. Some steps for how do you set up the music label? What exactly is the process? What do? You go and register a private limited company, What happens?
Before all of that, I think if you want to start a music label or anything in music business, teach yourself each and everything that you can about that particular thing.
And you
Most
relearn
artists
it
right
every
now,
day.
and you relearn it every day. I think most artists, be it established or starting artists, the knowledge of the recording side of things, masters, sound recordings, publishing, um, is not what it should be for a lot of artists. It is what will help you make decisions for yourself, and if you further plan to sign artists in that sense.
Watch All
Um,
About Music digital sessions every Saturday. Yeah.
But
All right.
Chaitanya,
Got the message.
I'm sorry, Chaitanya and Atul. Let's run the technical side of it also. So a private limited company and so on and so forth, if you can, Chaitanya.
yeah, sure. Uh, Having said that, then you set up a company, whatever structure it might be, private limited liability corporation. There's two, three other formats to it. Uh, Once you've done, of course, you assemble a team. You need to hire people to look after, the managing side of things, the day-to-day, dealing relationships with streaming platforms, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Ghana, Saban, all of them. Set up a relationship with a distributor. A distributor is one you give your music to, and they ingest that into music platforms and help you also market that music. There's various type of distribution deals that come into play. Uh, I think some of the leading distributors right now in India are Orchard, CD Baby, Believe, Horus Music. There's a lot more, but these are the ones that come off top of my mind.
And Chaitanya, my own question.
Yeah.
Are you guys distributing your music through Universal itself, or is it Believe or Orchard or what?
So our independent Gully Gang Records releases go via Believe, and any partnership releases that we do with, say, Universal or any other label, they go via them. So there's no one way. It depends on release to release.
Right.
Super.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go
those
ahead.
are the basics, and then put out the music.
And make good music. Correct. Okay. So
That's-
there's
yeah.
SAS Music asking, being a music producer, how can we approach a music label or start working to make a music label? What is the best time? So make a music label, I think Chaitanya just answered. Salim, how do you approach a music label? If you're a music producer, how do you get to a label and say, hey, listen, we want to make music for your artists?
Atul, this is a very tricky question. I mean, most of the time, if you're good, honestly, you are approached yourself. I mean, that we've seen it in the business. Like most of the artists, they want to work with a good music producer. So if SAS Music is saying that he's a music producer, then one great way to do that is to like collaborate with an artist. Like a singer or a writer. Who can take your music out, and then you get noticed as a music producer. Or you sign or you collaborate with a singer and an artist and make a single, make a song that is that you feel is fantastic, and release it on YouTube, be heard on Facebook, kind of put it out there in the universe, and you will definitely be noticed if your music has legs, if it has the right sound. No one can stop you. It's a great time.
Very sound advice, Salim. Very sound advice. I say that to everyone who talks to me as well. Okay, if there are no more questions, I don't see any more questions. Are there? Oh, yes. Okay, Bridget. Is it worth setting up a label financially? Okay, you guys don't answer because the taxman will come after you. So, Charles, what do you think?
Well, I think that before making a decision like that, I think both of the guys have said, I think the education part of this is really vital. Like, understand the business. How does the money flow? Where's the money going to come from? What percentage are you paying to different people for doing different things for you? Who are your guides? And then you start understanding, and by guides, I mean, none of us would walk into the middle of the Amazon rainforest without food and someone to show us how to get through to somewhere where we can find food. So you really need to decide where it is that you're going. How does it work? How does the money flow? How much is it going to cost you to get there? And really start thinking about how that works together.
So basically, I'm hearing a business plan somewhere.
Yeah, and I think financially, it's a difficult time to set up a label, obviously, because the return on investment in the streaming world is very different to putting out physical product where you got paid wholesale price for physical goods. But I think you have to, if you take a long-term view of this, and I think this has become a long-term business, the master rights business is becoming more like the publishing business. It's not about quick returns. It's about building a catalog and getting a revenue stream over time. I think it's always, if you believe in what you do and you have a real understanding of what it is that you're trying to bring into the marketplace, it's always worthwhile. The challenge is keeping it sustainable, finding the right people to guide you, and really making sure that you earning every cent that you possibly can, because in the early days, getting that margin into your business is really vital to your long term.
So I don't think we're going to take any more questions. I think basically it's all about the setup of the label. So what I am going to ask each of you, and start with you, Charles, is 3 points that you would tell people who wanted to set up their own labels. Do 1, 2, 3. You actually just said it, so know where the money is coming from. So let's say a business plan is 1. What would be the second point?
I think knowing what your purpose is. What are you bringing to the marketplace? Like, what is it that's unique about what you're doing? And really questioning yourself on that, and being very tough on yourself, identifying what it is that you exist. What's the culture that you're representing? And then the final part of it, I would say, is, taking that business, really understanding that culture. And the third is making connections, talking to as many people as you can about how this has worked, finding your guides, finding the people to help you, and making great music, because ultimately it's always about that.
All right. Chaitanya, 3 quick points.
Focus on the music. That's what will make or break your success. Learn as much, as Charles said, about the business, about the legalities of it. We're not all born with this knowledge. We have to seek out others like Atul, if we want to sort of understand the Indian aspect, the current aspect of business better. And yeah, again, focus on the music.
Excellent. Salim?
Your points, what are your questions? What's your question again?
Just one question. 3 points that you would advise people to, if they wanted to set up, not even set up their own label, but just self-release music. What are those?
First of all, there has to be like Charles said, there has to be a purpose. We, as composers, as musicians, most of the time don't have the freedom when you're doing music. Freedom is the most important thing for a musician to bring out what he or she wants to do. And that's one of the main reasons why one needs to have their own label. It's a great thing to have your own label, so to put out what you want to do. Second point is to be able to monitor whatever you're making. And this is most of the time, people have this thing, I made so much, I did such great music, but there is, I don't get anything. I don't see anything. I don't get any credit. So yes, of course, this is when you have your own label, when you're putting out your own thing, you're monitoring everything, giving due credits, giving due importance to the artist, to whatever you want to do. And the third thing is to, be able to have the joy of collaborating with whoever you want without any restrictions. And that's a very big thing for a musician, to be able to have that freedom. And that's why, again, I'm insisting on that point, Atul, that as labels, as all independent labels, including people who are here on this panel, we got to understand, to have that freedom of collaboration, you have to have joy of being able to, share music with each other. Doesn't matter. You can work it out on which label it's going to release. It probably can release on both. It can sit on both YouTube channels, and you can figure out who's going to monetize. But don't stop the process of creativity. Don't have that ceiling of, sorry, I'm my own label and you are your own label, so we can't collaborate. Don't do that. Right. It's very important to join hands and to bring out good music.
Yeah, look, in the past, back in the day when we used to have sleeve notes on the albums, we always used to be very keen and amused to read George Benson appears courtesy of Warner Brother Records on an EMI record. So nothing is impossible in the business. And I'd just like to add a couple of things. It's not about the money. You'll find a way around it, like was demonstrated with the new Salim Suleiman video. There are ways of doing it, and you can do it inexpensively. It's about creativity, and I think both Chaitanya and Salim have impressed on that enough. It's about the creativity, and as Charles said, if you are looking to go out there and do something, make sure that you're doing something that's different. Don't follow the leader, become the leader. And with that, thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye, guys. Bye-bye.
Whoa.